Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. L'schut Refuah Shelema of Rachel, Simcha Bat Nahid, Shahram, Shalom Ben Turan, and Yasmin Bat Sarah, that should have Refuah Shelema. Amen. So we discussed three different shitas yesterday in what Rabbi Yochanan seems to hold when it comes to ta'arovet of yayin, wine that's yayin nesech with wine that is kasher, whether or not you have water mixed with it or not. And the last one that we discussed was ki'ata ravin. So we're going to just go quickly through the last one because the discussion today is going to start within that third shita in Rabbi Yochanan, the shita of Ravin. Ravin was one of the students of Rabbi Yochanan also, who came from Eretz Yisrael. Some famous people traveled from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel and brought with themselves a lot of the shmuot of Rabbi Yochanan, all the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan, which became famous through Shas. Of course, perhaps the most famous of them is Rav Dimi, which we started the Amud with, and Ravin is probably in second place. Ki ata Ravin, when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Yain nesech shnafa lebor, if you have wine that's yain nesech that falls into a vat of yain that's kasher, v'nafar sham kiton shel mayim, and you also had some water fall in the same place, ro'in et haheter, this whole chidush of ro'in. You know what Rabbi Yochanan holds? You look at it as if the wine that's mutar is at all not there. You only have water and the little yain nesech that fell in. You have 60 times more water than yain nesech, mutar. You don't have 60, asur. But we don't say, well, wine and wine is min bemino. Min bemino is b'mashahu. And therefore you would require 60 times the entire yain that you have in the vat. We don't say that. You take out of the equation the yain that's mutar. You say, okay, how much yain nesech fell in? 10 ounces. Chazaku baruch. If you have 600 ounces of water inside the vat, the whole thing is mutar. You don't have that, then it's asur. That's the chidush of Rabbi Yochanan. So says the Gemara, v'hashar ma'im rabin alav umebaterin oto. Now here is where we're holding. Ki ata Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. When Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda came, he explained within the shita of Ravin in Rabbi Yochanan, and he said like this: Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo shanu, this that we said in this braita, in this memra, in the name of Ravin, is only in a very specific scenario, a sliver of a case, shenafal kiton shel mayim tchila, that the water fell first, before you had yayin that's kasher, aval lo nafal sham kiton shel mayim tchila, matza et min et mino. If you have kosher wine in the vat, and the nesech wine falls in, that already you say, well, there's nothing else to be matir the yain nesech that fell in, and therefore we see the two wines as min bemino, matzah min et mino. They become one goof of yain nesech now, and now you would need 60 times water, equivalent of the entire measurement of the wine that you have, yain nesech plus the yain that's kasher. Now you need 60 times the entire amount of wine to allow the wine. But if you have water first and then yain nesech falls in, then you could just disregard the yain the yain that's kasher and say, okay, we have enough water keneged the yain nesech, and you let it go. Matzah min et mino v'neor. So ikad matnila amatnitin. There are those who say this Rabbi Shmuel that we just learned in the name of Rabbi Yochanan on the Mishnah that we just had on top of the Amud. Remember how we had in the Mishnah, Yayin beyayin kolshehu, the Mishnah said, that when you have wine mixed with wine, the Isur is bekolshehu, the mixture is going to be bekolshehu. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo Shanu, in the Mishnah it says, this that wine and wine gets mixed and any amount, even minute amount, is going to aser the whole ta'arovit, is going to prohibit the entire mix. Lo shanu ela shelo nafal sham kiton shel mayim. That's only if you don't have any water mixed over there. Aval nafal sham kiton shel mayim. But if you have some water mixed over there, then we disregard the yayin of heter. Ro'in et ha-heter ke'ilu eino. We disregard the amount of yayin nesech, and we just deal with water versus the yayin nesech. And we measure with 60 times water. If you have 60 times water, the amount of yayin nesech, then the entire thing is permissible. The entire thing is mutar. The difference, Gemara says, what's the difference if you read it on the first story of Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, or you say it on the Mishnah? Ma'ika ben ledematnilah amatnitin ben ledematnilah ade Ravin. What's the difference if Rab Shmuel ben Yehuda was said on the comment of Ravin, or it was said directly on the Mishnah? Gemara says very simple. I mean, let's not look at the Gemara. Ourselves, we could say it very simply. Ravin was saying this chidush anyways. Ravin is the one that said Rabbi Yochanan holds you have mixture of wine, and water, good wine, bad wine, and water. We just disregard the good wine, and we deal with the yayin nesech and water. That's Rav. So if Rav Shmuel ben Yehuda is commenting already on that, he's not telling you that halacha. Ravin said that halacha. So what is he commenting on? He's only commenting on which one was first, which one was not first. So it matters which one was first. So therefore, the chidush of Rav Shmuel ben Yehuda would be that that's only good if you had the water when yayin nesech fell in, but you can't add water afterwards, after the yayin nesech is already in, and then the water fell. That's no good. But on the Mishnah, if you say Rav Shmuel ben Yehuda commented on the Mishnah, then it's very simple. He's just telling you this halacha in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you're allowed to disregard the mutar wine, the allowed wine, the good wine, the kosher wine, and just deal with the yayin nesech and water. Which one comes first doesn't make any difference. Whether you had the yayin nesech first and then the water fell in, or you had the water and then the yayin nesech, doesn't make a difference. As long as you have three things, you have kosher wine, nesech wine, and water, you just disregard the yayin kasher and you deal with yayin nesech versus water, and you're good to go. That would be the difference between whether or not Rabbi Shmuel ben Yehuda was said on the Mishnah or on the story of Ravin. So let's now read it inside. Man de matnila amatnitin lo ba'i techila, uman de matnila ad Ravin ba'i techila. Simple. If you said it on Ravin, then you need water to have been there before the yayin nesech fell in. Otherwise, you don't necessarily need it. Itmar says the Gemara. It was said yayin nesech shenafal lebor v'nafal sham kiton shel mayim. Now, this is examining Rabbi Yochanan in a different angle. We said in the Beit Midrash, yayin nesech that fell inside a bor of yayin, a vat of wine, v'nafal sham kiton shel mayim, and some water also fell inside. So you have a small amount of wine, that's yayin nesech, that fell in. You have some larger amount of water, the scenario is in such case that the water is 60 times more than the small amount of yain nesech, but the water certainly is not 60 times more than the entire wine. Right? So says the Gemara, Amar Chizkiya, Higdilu be'isur asur. If you have a case that yain nesech fell at the end, and therefore now you have, the isur became a lot, we don't say let's disregard the heter and let the water deal with the yain nesech. We don't say that. If you had wine there at the time that the yain nesech fell in, this actually it's very sensible. This chizkiya for us will be very sensible. Think about it together. Chizkiya says, if you have wine there, when the other wine falls in, yain and yain, they become one, and now you need 60 times the whole thing. The only time, says Chizkiya, that we would say that the water is going to nullify the wine is if you don't have yain kasher at all. You have a little yain nesech, you have a lot of water, and they got mixed 60 times more. So now you already had the stamp of mutarim lachem because it was bater. Then you have more wine of kosher wine getting mixed. That already does not change the equation. Everything is mutar. But if you had water and yain that's kasher, and then yain nesech falls in, farfallen, that's not going to work because you have wine and wine together. That's what Chizkiya says. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu higdilu be'isur mutar. He says it doesn't make a difference. Even if you have wine that falls into a mixture of wine and water, yain nesech that falls into a mixture of kosher wine and water, still mutar. Now, what is the machloket? What's the sevara of the machloket between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan is the question of the Gemara. Says the Gemara Amaleh, Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera. Lema Chizkiya Rabbi Yochanan mepiluktat Rabbi Eliezer Rabbanan kamiflegi. We are all familiar. Let's do a quick chazara. We have had this. This is the third time you're having this. We're familiar with the machloket Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim when it comes to sourdough. Right? Comes up around Pesach all the time. The sourdough chametz. You have chametz that was used, sourdough that was used to ferment a amount of dough, kosher dough, and you had a mixture of sourdough that is truma with the sourdough that's chulin. Now a Jew a regular non-Kohen cannot eat truma. So if you have a sourdough of teruma using for fermentation of a dough, then the entire dough is no good for you. Only Kohen could eat it, right? But here the problem is we didn't have enough sourdough of teruma. So what happened was you had 50%. Let's imagine if 100 grams of sourdough is needed, you have 50 grams of sourdough of teruma, 50 grams of sourdough of chulin. Each one of them by itself was not sufficient to make the dough rise, but both together could. So one of them fell first, the second one fell second, and now you have a dough that's nice and risen, and now the question is asked, can a Yisrael eat this, or can only a Kohen eat this? What do you say? So we had the machloket, Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer said, if you remember, we go after which one fell last. If the teruma fell last, that's the one that was the makeh patish, right? That's the one that finished the job, and therefore the entire dough is considered teruma. Can't touch it. But if the chulin fell last, so then what made it actually rise was chulin, mutar. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Chachamim say, no. Ben kach u ben kach is mutar. Doesn't make a difference. The teruma fell first, the chulin fell first. Doesn't make any difference. As long as you don't have enough teruma that would be sufficient to ferment the entire dough to rise, mutar. Even if teruma was the one, the sourdough of teruma fell there last, still is mutar. That's what that's what Chachamim say. So let's read it and then see how it's related to this. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Achar Acharon Aniba. Rabbi Eliezer holds that you go after the one that fell last. If teruma, then the whole thing is teruma. If chulin, then the whole thing is chulin. V'chachamim omrim ben shnafal isur betchila uben basof eno asur ad sheyehe bo k'dei la'achmis. Doesn't make a difference if it's teruma that fell first, chulin that. If you don't have enough teruma that would have been good enough for the entire amount of dough to be fermented and to rise, then the whole thing is mutar. Eno asur ad sheyehe bo kedei la'achmitz. So says the Gemara, basically, the Gemara doesn't speak it out, but the Gemara is suggesting that just like Rabbi Eliezer holds that it depends which one fell first, which one fell last, and we go after the last, here also Chizkiah holds like Rabbi Eliezer. Because Chizkiah is the one that says, well, it depends. If the Yain Nesech fell last, and then it's not good enough. If the Yain Heter fell last, then it's good enough. So you see, we go after the last one. If the last one was Yain Nesech, the whole thing is bad. If the last one was Yain Heter, then the whole thing is good. That's what it sounds like. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? That's absolutely not sayable. But Tisbra, that's a svara. Is that sensible at all? Says the Gemara. Hamar Abaye, you missed the Abaye. We learned the last time this came up in the Gemara that Abaye holds lo shanu ela shekadam vesilek et haisur. The whole shita of Rabbi Eliezer over there is that yes, the sourdough of Isur fell first, then you took it out, and the sourdough of Heter fell last. That's when it's mutar. But if sourdough of Isur fell, and then sourdough of Heter also on top of it fell, but you never took the sourdough of Isur out, then it's not mutar, it's still Asur. So, but Chizkiah, that's in Rabbi Eliezer's case. But Chizkiah in our case, what would Chizkiah paskin if you had the Yain Nesech and water, and then you didn't take, of course you didn't take the Yain Nesech out, and then wine of Heter fell in? Mutar. So you see clearly that Chizkiah and Rabbi Eliezer are not the same, are not connected. Chizkiah does not hold like Rabbi Eliezer. Aval lo kadam vesilek et ha'isur asur. So says the Gemara throws the hands. Gemara says, wait a second, so Chizkiah da'amar keman. Who in the world is Chizkiah like over here? The Gemara says no. Ela hacha bero'in kamiflik. You have to understand that this that we explained as a davar pashut is not so pashut at all. We explained today as a davar pashut that when you have a mixture of three things, you have yain nesech, you have yain of heter, and you have water, what do? We gave a formula. You just delete the yain of heter as if it's not there. Ro'in, we look at it as though it's not there, and the water is going to be added 60 times more. If it's 60 times more than yain nesach, then the whole thing is good. That's what we said. Who says that that's pashut? Who says that you could disregard a yain of heter that's there? Ro'in, we see it as if it's not. We look at it as if it's not. What do you mean you look at it as if it's not there? That's not so pashut, says the Gemara. That's exactly the machloket of Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan suggests the Gemara. LeChizkiah let leh ro'in, Rabbi Yochanan itle. Chizkiah doesn't hold of this whole business of ro'in. That's why I said when we mentioned Chizkiah on the top of this Amud, it's a very sensible thing. Chizkiah says, well, if you have wine and you pour another wine on it, there's now min bemino, and we look at the entire wine as one entity. This whole business of we look at the wine of heter as if it's not there, as if it is there. So therefore, Chizkiah says the only scenario that I could agree to be matir is if you have wine that's asur, no wine of heter, water falls, it is 60 times more than the wine, nullifies it, and then you have additional wine of heter falling in. That's already nullified, and that's good. Then it's good. That's the only scenario I could agree with. Says Rabbi Yochanan holds of this chidush of ro'in. Now the Gemara is going to challenge that as well. The Gemara says, really seriously, Rabbi Yochanan holds of ro'in? Let me throw at you a Rabbi Yochanan from a different place that seems to not hold like that. Umi itle Rabbi Yochanan ro'in. Really? Rabbi Yochanan holds of ro'in? Let's take a look. We know Rav Ami and Rav Asi, they were the two twin towers of Torah in Eretz Yisrael. And they were very close to the Malchut. Also, people would sing for them when they would come to see the Roman officials in Eretz Yisrael. They're tremendous poskim and dayanim, Rav Ami and Rav Asi. So Rav Asi once directly asked Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei kosot, echad shel chulin ve'echad shel teruma. We have 2 cups of wine. Now, we already know from many places in Shas that they used to not use pure wine in the time of Chazal. It was too strong. You had a little wine, and then you would add 3 times more, because the Rashi over here, depending on how strong it was, the stronger wines, more water, right? And you have now 2 ready cups, ready for drinking. That means there's a little wine, and there's a lot of water on it. And you have a wine of teruma, a wine of chulin. And by mistake, the wife didn't know and mixed them both in one bottle. Oy vavoy, vavila. Now what do? Right? Mutar or asur? Is it teruma? Can a non-Kohen drink this or not? So look at what Rabbi Yochanan was asked. Rav Asi says, you by mistake mix these 2 together. Mahu. There is enough water in the mixture of both to be 60 times the yain not nesech, but yain of truma that was over there. Right? There's enough to be mebatel the yain of teruma. Do we say that the 2 water contents add up together to nullify this wine of teruma or not? Which is essentially this very question. Let's delete the wine of heter as if it's not there. So what are you left with? Water, and yain of teruma. And the 2 waters together is enough amount to nullify the yain of the... Do we say that or not? And you know what Rabbi Yochanan answered? Crickets, nothing. He had no answer. Didn't answer it. V'lo pashat le. So therefore, you see from here that Rabbi Yochanan also doesn't hold of this concept. He says, no. Sorry. That's in the beginning. At the end, this is one of those dilemmas that Rabbi Yochanan rather had, and then he decided that actually we do say ro'in, this whole concept of putting away the yain shel heter, and imagining that's not there, and therefore at the end he actually did answer Rav Asi, and our Gemara over here is chronologically after that happened. So Rabbi Yochanan holds in our Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan already holds as a halacha pshuta that ro'in et heter keilu eno, that we disregard the heter and we take a look at yain nesech and water. If the water is enough to nullify yain nesech, then the entire thing is mutar. And the Gemara says, I prove it to you. It's not that I'm just pulling this out of my pocket, that probably Rabbi Yochanan at some point decided. No. I have a reason, I have a proof to show you that Rabbi Yochanan actually holds exactly this concept. Itmar nami, amar, we have a beferish braita that says, or memra, that says, amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Rav Ami said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Asi, amar Rabbi Yochanan. So there's a question if it's Rav Ami or Rav Asi, but both of them in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So this very case, was actually paskin by Rabbi Yochanan at some point to Rav Asi. The same story. Bet kosot, echad shel chulin ve'echad shel teruma. You have 2 cups of diluted wine, 1 teruma, 1 chulin, umezagan ve'irevan ze bazeh, and you mix them and together, and now you have a mixture of teruma and water and chulin. Says the Gemara, ro'in et haheter kilu eno. We take a look at the wine of chulin as if it's not there. So therefore you're left with water plus yain of teruma. And if you have enough water to nullify the yain of teruma, then you could give the entire bottle to a Yisrael, a non-Kohen, to drink. Ravin alav batrinoto. So therefore says the Gemara, you see that Rabbi Yochanan, who we paskin like halachically, holds that when you have a mixture of wine and water, heter and isur, and yain nesech falls in, we do say this concept that we disregard the heter, we look at the water even though that heter and isur would be min bemino, which would be asur b'mashehu, we say no. Let's put aside the yayin of heter. If you have enough water keneged the yayin of isur, then that's nullified, and then we bring into the equation the yayin of heter. Then the entire thing would be mutar. That's the psak of Rabbi Yochanan, and that happens to be the halakha of Rambam Paskins as well. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll buy 2 dots. We'll continue this in the days to come.
Rabbi, does this answer the question of order? If the